Fistful of Lead, except Fistful of Lead, Horse and Musket. Welcome to Fistful of Fridays, where we play one or more of the Fistful of Lead titles, and having graduated, we've played through at least one game using all three of the books for fantasy. We are now going to advance the clock to Horse and Musket. One of the nice things about investing in a system like Wiley Games' Fistful of Lead is that the scenarios that you find in the back of these games, and this is what we're going to be talking about today, can be used in a variety of different settings. One of the reasons I did not start with Horse and Musket is because I didn't pay for this. This was sent to me by Jay Wiley as a complimentary copy, and so I'm going to say complimentary things about it. Take that for what you will. You have been warned. Now, the scenario, one of the issues I had with Horse and Musket is that Fistful of Lead is generally designed for 5 figures per side. There are some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, it's 5 figures per side. And when I do my Horse and Musket, my Napoleonics, I like to have the trifecta, horse, foot, and guns. How am I going to put together a reasonable scenario that pits 5 French against 5 British? That's a challenge. Maybe I haven't watched enough of the Richard Sharp series. Maybe there's a lot of 5-on-5 fights in there. But aside from your basic, we're going to go burn that farmstead down to get the money, foraging missions, I don't see a whole lot of call for that. And fortunately, Wiley Games gives you the answer. In my next video, I'm going to be playing, in this book, episode number 6, Maelstrom. And I don't want to give away too much because I want you to buy the game, but Maelstrom looks a little something. Let's see, there's 6 scenarios in here, or is it 6? No, it's 7. Here's Maelstrom. Here's what the terrain looks like. We'll get that in focus there. Right? There's your table. How easy is that? Now, what's going to happen is you're going to take turns. Each player is going to put one terrain piece in one of these 9 squares. Once you've got 9 pieces of terrain, you're going to put the leader for the French in 8 and the leader for the British in 2. Then for the other 4 guys, you're going to roll a d10, and that's the quadrant or septet. Wait, the nuitant, what is it? Octant, nontent? The tic-tac-toe board, that's where you put the guy. It's got to be 6 inches away from the nearest model. And the idea is this is a battlefield kind of towards the end, or things have gotten complicated, people get separated, mists have rolled in, and the gun smoke, the big white powder has obscured vision. So vision is obscured to a mere 12 inches, and each of the 2 leaders, the British and the French, has to round up the other 4 models and get off the board. The more models he gets off the board with, the more models he surrounds himself with at the end of a turn, the more victory points he secures. And then if they get off the board, they'll secure more victory points. So a very interesting scenario here that will allow me to mix horse and foot, even though we're not dealing with big blocks of troops racing hither and yon. We'll start off in the next video when we play through that scenario. We are going to run through the process of setting up the terrain, setting down the guys, and that's going to take a while before we actually start flipping over cards and rolling dice. So I thought I'd take an opportunity here with this extra kind of short video, maybe a bonus episode, to lay out our rosters and the scenario objectives. That way, when we go to the battle tomorrow, we can get right into the action. So this is the roster sheet of the French. Let's look a little closer at each of these figures. Now, I said this scenario is great because you can have a couple of cavalrymen on the table with a handful of infantry guys, and then I have a scenario where I'm only using one mounted figure, and that is Capitaine Robert Legimbeau, who is going to be rolling d10s for both shooting and close combat. He is a leader, so there's our first. And when you compile your roster, your leaders get 3 traits, including with the bonus of being a leader. So anybody within 12 inches of him and line of sight, that's going to be important, gets a +1 to their recovery rolls when they try to recover. He is mounted, so he moves an extra 8 inches. He's agile, so when you shoot at him, you're at -1. Also, you're at -1. In fact, I should write that down because he's mounted. So it's -2 when shot at. There's a chance, if you miss by 1, you shoot his horse, he falls to the ground. And I don't have a separate figure for this guy, but we'll just put a token or something down to indicate that he is now no longer mounted. The horse allows him to take an extra 3 inches of movement per per action. He is also very encouraging, so anybody within 12 inches, and again within line of sight, can remove their shock markers. Over here we've got a second in command. This is Lieutenant Sapper Joe. He is ferocious, so he does +1 on his wound rolls, and as you can see, he has nerves of steel, so he will ignore his first shock, and instead of a sword or a bayonet, he is carrying an axe. In fact, the figure itself here has an axe slung over his shoulder. That means that when he injures another figure, he is going to do +2 to the wound roll. That's a pretty big bonus. It's that easy. Second in commands get 2 traits. Sliding on down here to the kind of, what would you call it, mooks? We're going to have 2 of these guys, Rouge Savant over here on the right, and Corporal Mathieu Kirkar. The guy with the full-blown rifle there and the nice green plumage, he's got Eagle Eye, so he has an additional 2 and 4 inches on the range of his musket. And over here, Rouge Savant is a weaponsmith, so he ignores weapon malfunctions. It's not clear to me whether he ignores all of them for the game or just the first one. We'll bridge that cross when we come to it, or we'll cross that bridge. The last guy is going to be Deadeye, and I'm going to use this foot dragoon. It's just to remind me that he's in the sniper pose. So he's got a musket. He just has a +1 to shoot. That's his sole trait. Not very complicated on the side of the French. However, things will get a little more complicated on the part of the British. Here we have on foot Captain Tommy Hill. He is a leader. Again, he gives that +1 to recovery rolls to anybody within 12 inches. He's a veteran, so he's going to roll D12s. He is also a fencer, so when he is involved in melee combat, he's going to roll 2 D12s and pick the best one. He's also a strategist. My British, as long as the captain is on his feet, will get an extra card for their activations. Discard whichever one you want. Then we've got a banner carrier here. Sergeant Martin of the Dart is carrying the colors. He has D10s for both his shooting and fighting, but he is a brawler, so when he's in melee, he gets to reroll, and he is a bugler. Now, there's no rules in the Horse and Musket rule set for banners. What I've done is I've taken the rule for bugler. And a bugler, if he uses both of his actions, everybody on the table, all of his allies get an automatic recovery. They automatically recover from, I think it's shock. And what I did is I said, well, he's got a banner which is very inspiring. So anybody within line of sight of this guy, if he takes 2 actions, everybody in line of sight gets a free immediate recovery roll at +1 because they can see the banner. So there you go. That's your different. Then that banner is also classed as a pike. In other words, if he gets involved in a melee, he can run up to within 2 inches and start bonking on a guy. And if he wins the combat, this guy has to stay 2 inches away. Only if he loses the combat will the guy be able to close the gap, and now he loses the benefit of the pike. So it's kind of a nice way of controlling. And the real big thing there is because he has his reach of 2 inches on either side, he can stand in a gap and guys can't kind of sneak around that 1 inch zone of control. So that's his benefit. For the 3, call them ground pounders, the general soldiers, we've got a cannoneer who has been separated from his unit. Apparently that whatever it is, maybe he's a foot, just a regular artilleryman, and his battery was overrun. He's very lost. He's very confused. John Scar here is a brute. And this lever that he uses to help shove his artillery piece into position is classed as a club. When he hits you in combat, and he actually does a shock marker or a wound marker, he does an additional shock on top of that. And then he has a pistol, which operates as every other pistol. He's also a brute, which means he rolls D12 in close combat. So kind of a beast. He's a tough guy, used to shoving several ton artillery pieces around. He's a tough guy. Then we've got Corporal Mann Jr., and he has a D10 shoot. He's a sniper. See how he's looking down the barrel of his gun? He does have a knife. He does not have a bayonet, so that's interesting. And what I did is to make him a sniper and a specialist capable of using a rifle. Now, these normally And I don't have a musket shown. Here's the last musket guy. Musket, after they shoot, they have to take 2 turns to reload. And it has to be on the same turn, I think. I'll double check that before we actually play the game. This guy over here, because he's firing a breech loading rifle, he took the specialist bit. He only has a reload on a natural 1, and then he also has a knife, and it has a little longer range. But in order to buy that specialist and the sniper, I had to take, which gives him the reroll when he's shooting, I had to take a disadvantage, and that is brittle. So whenever he gets shot, I mean, he's a good shot, but when he gets hit by anybody, his wound roll is at a +1. So he's going to take a shock on a 1 through, well, let's take a look at what that chart is. He's going to take a shaken result on a 1 through 4, and on a 5 through 7, he's wounded, and he'll be out of the game on an 8 up. The last of the soldiers is Samuel Guest. And in case you hadn't figured it out right now, these are the names of commenters that I've kind of finagled into sounding more period specific. He is simply steady. When he's shooting, he ignores shock and wound penalties. He has a musket and bayonet. So these 3 guys, so a little bit more eclectic. It's clear. I guess things are going better for the French than the British, because the British have leaders and bannermen and artillerymen and, what is this, light dragoon? Oh, he's not a dragoon though, is he? He's kind of like light infantry, skirmishers and regular guys. I know he's wearing a tricorn. He's a red coat. Deal with it. So they're a bit of much more hodgepodge eclectic mix than the French, and anything goes. Now we've got an excuse to use all of these fun little figures in one 5-on-5 skirmish in a tiny little, postage stamp sized section of the battlefield. We'll see whether Captain Tommy Hill or Capitan Robert Legimbeau can gather up his 4 allies and get back to the friendly lines before the other guy in our next fight. And anything else? Nah, we're good. See you then. I'm praying for you.